Hey everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today we will be finishing up chapter number 6. What does that mean? You are finished after this lesson, you are finished with the first semester. Obviously, you got to take your exam still, so be studying for that, but we are finished. So congratulations, you have persevered and you have watched these videos and you've gotten to the last one in the first semester. You're halfway done with this book, so good job. Keep working hard. All right, in your book on page 212, we're going to be in lesson 6.6, dividing a polynomial by a binomial. So now, last lesson was when we divided a polynomial by a monomial by 1. This one, as you notice, we're going to be doing it by a binomial by 2. This is totally different. This is brand new information, so make sure that you buckle up your seatbelt. This is going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride, so hold on. All right, so hopefully you remember in baby math, okay, so back when you were in elementary school, you learned how to divide. And hopefully you learned the steps of division, long division. You remember you had to divide and multiply and subtract and bring down and all the different things that you had to do. You were hoping that that was gone forever, right? You were like, okay, we're done. Hopefully that's gone forever. Bad news. It's back. All right. And it's back in algebra and it's back with a vengeance. Okay. So here it is. And you have to be able to master this in order to accomplish this, dividing a polynomial by a binomial. Okay. So here's what we want to do. Table B. Make sure you look at this. This is very important to what we're going to be doing. First of all, we want to divide. Okay. What does that mean? Not like divide it out like you would maybe just if they were regular numbers. You want to check this out. It says divide the first term of the divisor into the first term of the dividend. So you're just taking the first piece into the first piece. That's it. Okay, so you don't divide the whole binomial into the whole trinomial. You just do the first piece into the first piece. That's it. Then you put that number up at the top. Then you multiply the first term in the quotient that you get. So in this case, it was the 2x by the whole rest of the thing. And then you subtract, and then you bring down. So just like when you did these in baby math. All right, so it's enough talking about it. Let's go ahead and do it. So you can follow along. I'm going to do that one in your book, the one that we were just looking at on page 212. So we'll go ahead and just go through the steps. Now I've written the steps over here. So we're going to divide first. Now it says first into first. I always like to do this, especially when I'm kind of learning how to do this. I always like to underline what I'm doing. First into first. That's it. First into first. Okay. So in other words, you're saying 4x goes into 8x squared how many times? 4 goes into 8 2 times. Now, this is important. Where do you write this? So you might be thinking, oh, okay, I just write it here. So 4 goes into x, and then x goes into x squared x times. So x goes into x squared. You would subtract, because this is an x1, 2 minus 1, so you get your x. Okay, now, you would be wrong because you don't write it up above that. Make sure, notice that this is an x, not an x squared. So the x is going to go into the x column. This is where the x's all go, is in this column. If you don't do that, you're going to get very confused very quickly. So we're going to take our 2x and we're going to write it here. Now that doesn't feel right because we did not divide 4 into 18. We divided 4 into 8. And then, but we wrote it over top of the x column. So get in the habit of writing it over the x column. If you try to write it over the wrong thing, you're going to be, your whole problem is going to go crazy on you and you're going to be trying to figure out what's going on. The problem is you have to write them in the same columns. Very, very important, okay? Now, the next step is to multiply. What are we going to multiply? Well, if you go back to the book on 212, it says that you multiply this that you got, the thing that you just divided into, and you multiply it back times this. Okay, you basically distribute it back into that binomial. So 2x times 3, 2 times 3 is going to give us 6. X times nothing gives us x. Notice that again, the x's are all lining up in that x column. That's really, really important. Now, the next thing that we do is we take the 2x times the 4x. So 2 times 4 is going to give us 8. X times x is going to give us x squared. This should always cancel out. Now, you might get into them where it doesn't because it's, an odd number or something. That's going to be a really hard problem to solve. So the best thing is for most of these are going to cancel out. In the next step, what we do is we subtract, and this is where that cancels out. Notice that these are the same, 8x squared and 8x squared. You're like, that doesn't cancel. If I combine those, it gives me 16x squared. But remember that we are subtracting. How do we subtract in algebra? To subtract in algebra, you follow the rules. What's the rule? Change the sign of the second and add. So we're going to change the sign of these second ones here. So this is we're subtracting this whole thing right here. Okay. So change the sign of the second and add. That's very important that you change the signs of the second and you go back and add them. When you add them, notice this one is going to cancel out, and that's what we want to have happen. We're going to get a 0 here, and then when we do this one, we get 18 plus a negative 6. How do you add when it has different signs? You subtract, take the sign of the largest. 18 minus 6 is 12. The sign is a positive 12, and then it's x, so the x stays the same. Again, in our column, this is our x column, so everything in that column has to be an x. All right, and now we have we've canceled this out, we've zeroed this out, and we've subtracted. Now we go down to our next one, which is bring down. Okay, so now we're going to bring down our 9, so we have a plus 9 down here. After bring down, we cycle back up to the top and we do it again. Divided by, so we're going to do the 4x into the 12x. Remember, first into first. Okay? Don't try to divide this whole thing into this whole thing. That's not going to work out for you. First into first. Okay? 4 goes into positive 12 how many times? 4 goes into 12 3 times. Positive 3 times because this is positive and this is positive. So it's going to be positive 3 times. Now we go to our next one, which is multiply. So we go here. 3 times 3 is 9. And then we go back up here and we say 3 times 4x. 3 times 4 is 12. X times nothing is x. And remember, we are going to change the sign of the second. So this is going to become an addition problem, and we're going to change these signs so they were positive signs, and we're going to change those to negative signs. So we're going to follow the rules of addition. What are the rules of addition? We're going to go back on here, and we're going to say 9 minus negative 9 gives us a 0, so that cancels out. 12 minus 12, 12x minus 12x, that's going to also cancel out 0. So in other words, we have a 0, 0. When we get that, we're done. We don't have anything else, and so our answer is going to be 2x plus 3. 2x plus 3. All right, let's do this next one. I'm going to move a little bit faster on this one. So first into first, and so we have x into x squared, and that goes x times. Okay, x times 5 gives us 5x. X times x gives us x squared. We subtract, so we change the signs and add. This is going to cancel, and we're going to end up with 2 minus, or 5 minus 2 is going to give us 3. Sign of the larger is negative, and this is an x. We're going to bring down, subtract, or minus 17. We're going to do the same thing here. X first into first, okay? So x goes into negative 3x how many times? It goes negative times because this is a positive up here, and this is a negative down here. So it's going to go negative 3 times. And so now we multiply. Now this is important this time. Make sure when we multiply by the negative 3. So negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And then we're going to subtract. How do we subtract? We change the signs and we add. Okay. So again, same thing here. This one's going to cancel. Now we have a negative 17 and a positive 15. So subtract 17 minus 15 is 2. And the negative is larger, so it's going to be negative 2. Now this is very important for your answer right here. You have a remainder, you have a leftover. In other words, you have nothing else to bring down. There's only zeros over there. There's nothing else over here. It's nothing. So when we get there, we're done. But we have to take this negative 2. So we're going to take this negative 2 and we're going to make that just like you did when you had remainders in math, you put the remainder over the divisor. We're going to do the same thing. Minus 2 over x plus 5. And that would be our answer. X minus 3 minus 2 over x plus 5. That's how you would answer that problem. All right, let's do the next one. You might say, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Well, we just wrote it like a fraction. And you might say, well, I just want to make these all separate. 2x over x plus 2. And then plus x to the 4th over x plus 2. You might want to do it. You might want to try to do it the way we did the last lesson. But we have a problem here. And our problem is we can't do anything with this because we have this binomial in the denominator. There's nothing we can do. We can't say, oh, this is 1. That doesn't work in math. The math doesn't math. Okay? So that's not mathing. That breaks like every rule in algebra right there. So we can't do that. That's not a valid way to solve this one. So what are we going to do if we can't do that? How are we going to do this? All right. So what we do is we set this up like a division problem, like the long division that we've just been working on. So your denominator is your divisor. So that's going to be our x plus 2 that goes out here. And the numerator is going to be our dividend. So that's going to be our 2x plus x to the 4th minus 6. Now, you might say, we're ready to go. And I wish that we were, but we are not. And so why aren't we ready to go? Well, we've got a couple problems in this one. The first problem is that we have an x and then we have an x to the 4th. They're not in order. Remember, we have to do them by descending order. So you might say, okay, well, let's put them in descending order and then we'll be ready to go. All right, well, let's try it. So now we have x to the 4th plus 2x. Where did I get the plus? Because this is a positive out here. If there's no sign, it's a positive. And then minus 6. And you might say, now we're ready to go. And I would say, time out, not quite. What else do we have to do? Notice that we have, remember when I said we have these columns that we have to go in? Well, here's the problem. We have an x to the 4th, but we need an x to the 3rd, we need an x squared, and then we need an x. We need extra columns in this one because we have to have, again, this is the x to the 4th column, this is the x cubed column, this is the x squared column, and this is the x column. Okay, that x column. So we need these two. These two are missing in this one. Okay, and again, you can say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it my way. Okay, go for it and let me know how it works out for you. Okay, it's not going to work out for you. You're going to get the wrong answer. So you have to add these columns. So what I like to do is I like to do it like this. So x to the 4th, that's here. And then we're making up a 0 x to the 3rd column, a 0x squared column, and then is our 2x column. Let's extend this. And then is our negative 6 column, minus 6. Okay? So right now you're looking at thing going, wow, that thing's massive. It's, goes all the way across the whole screen. It's not that bad. We just keep doing it. We just keep going through the process. So here's our x to the 4th. Here's our x to the 3rd. Here's our x squared. Here's our x. And then at the end is our nothing column. Okay? So let's go ahead. And now we're ready to work this problem. Now that we've got it in the right order, So x to the fourth goes first. And now that we've created these extra columns, you'll see in the book they don't put the x cubed and the x squared. I like to do it because that way it helps me remember which column is which. I know why they don't do it, but I like to do it. You can do it however you want to, but just make sure that you do put at least a 0 in there, if not a 0x cubed or whatever that column needs. So we're going to divide first into first. Let me change colors here real quick so we can kind of follow this a little bit better. All right, so first into first, x into x to the fourth. X goes into x to the fourth, x cubed times. Make sure it's in the x cubed column. This is why we need that column, because we need somewhere to write our answer. And you're also going to see that we have to do some subtraction here with the x cubed column. So now we're going to multiply x cubed times 2, and that's going to give us 2x cubed, and that's a positive. And then we're going to multiply here, and that's going to give us x to the fourth, and that's also positive. We're going to subtract. In order to subtract, we change the sign of the second, and we add. All right, so we're ready to go ahead and combine these now. So these ones are going to cancel, the x to the fourth. Remember, I said those almost always are going to cancel. So we get a 0 there, but we do get something here. So if I have a -2 and a 0, I'm going to get -2x cubed in this column. Now I'm going to bring down plus 0x squared. X goes into first into first. X goes into -2x. It's going to go -2x squared times, because we're going x1 into x cubed, and that gives us x squared times. All right, and so now we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply this times our +2, and that's going to be a negative times a positive is going to be a negative, and that's going to be a 4x squared. And then here we're going to get a -2x cubed. And then we're going to subtract these. So we change the signs of the second one. So we make those positive signs, and then we add. So we're going to go again back to this, and we're going to, this one right here, again, this left one almost always is going to cancel out. We get 0 there. And these are positives now, so we're going to add. We're going to get 4x squared. We're going to bring down whatever's next, so a +2x is what we bring down. Now we're ready to divide again. X goes into 4x squared, and that's going to go a +4 x, +4x. Notice we're in the x column now, so make sure that's always matching up. So +4. Now we take the +4 times the 2, and we get 8x, 8x. And then the +4 times the x, and that's going to give us 4x squared. And again, we are subtracting, so we're going to subtract, and we're going to change those signs. So let's subtract, and we're going to change the sign. So this was a positive, it becomes a negative. This becomes a negative, and then we're going to add. So change the signs and add. That's our subtraction. And so here's our problem right here. Again, this one cancels. If you notice, almost always that first one's going to cancel. And then this second one, 8 minus 2 is 6. And the sign of the 8 is larger, so -6x. We're going to bring down our 6 all the way down here, and it's a -6. So make sure you bring the negative with it. So -6. And then we're going to come way back up here. Okay, it's a big problem right here. I can shrink this down a little bit so you can see the whole thing. So x goes into -6x, and that's going to go -6 times -6. We're going to multiply here. -6 times 2 is going to give us a -12. And then -6 times x is going to give us a -6x. We subtract, we change the signs, and then we are going to get, on this one, we're going to get a 12 minus 6 is 6. Sign of the larger is a positive. These ones are going to cancel, and then we end up with a remainder of 6. When you have a remainder of 6, +6, we're going to put a positive sign here, and we're going to say 6 over this right here, x plus 2. And then this would be our answer for this dude. Okay? 3 or x cubed minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 6 plus 6 over 2x plus 2. Again, all kinds of stuff going on there, and we're going to do it one more time because we're having so much fun right now, okay? And I know it's a long video, but I want to get all these in. I want to make sure that we go over it. So this example is on page number 213 in your book, and so let's go ahead and do that. So again, we're going to write it like we have been. So x minus 3 is divided into, notice that we got to start with the x cubed. So x cubed. Notice there is no x squared, so we're going to write plus 0x squared. There is an x, so we'll put plus x, and then there is a minus 8 over here, okay? And so now we're ready to go. We're just ready to go through our steps one more time. This is so much fun. We're going to do it again. First into first, and so x goes in x cubed. That goes x squared times x squared times negative 3 is going to give me negative 3x squared. X squared times x is going to give me x cubed. We're going to change the signs and add. These ones are going to cancel, and I'm going to get 3x squared. Bring down my positive x. Ready to do it again. It's just keep on repeating the same process over and over. X goes into 3x squared. That's going to go a positive 3x times. Notice I'm in my x column. That's really important, being in my x squared column. So 3x times negative 3 is going to give me a negative 9x. And then that is going to give me a positive x squared. Subtract. So I change the signs and I add. When I change my signs and add, this cancels. And now I have a 10x over here. 10x, and I'm going to bring down my negative 8. All right, go back over here. So my first is my x into 10x. And that's going to give me a positive 10 right here. I'm going to now multiply. 10 times negative 3 is going to give me a negative 30. And then 10 times x is going to give me a 10x. I'm going to change my signs. I'm going to subtract, going to change my signs and add. This cancels, and I am left with this right here. 30 minus 8 gives me a 22, a positive 22. And now that is my remainder. So I have a plus 22 over my my divisor, which is x minus 3. X minus 3. And there's my answer. So you can go back in your book there and look at that on page 213. And I rushed through some of those, but you can slow that down if you want. You can watch it again if you want. As you're practicing these, go through that and just keep going through that same system. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Go back and do it again. Divide, first into first, then you multiply. Whatever you get times both of them, and then you subtract it, change the sign of the second, and add. Keep going through that process. Keep it all neat, because as soon as you start getting off, as soon as it starts going weird, you're going to have problems keeping it in the same columns. The whole thing's going to get messed up. All right? That's all I've got for you. Hopefully you learned something there. If you missed anything, be sure to slide it back and watch it again. We'll see you later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.